Welcome to the Go Time Podcast. Go Time Podcast. The meeting place of industry leaders, elite athletes, and game-changing individuals from around the world. Here we explore the grit, guts, and mental fortitude required to succeed in business, competition, and life that you've been looking for. So stop looking and start listening. It's Go Time with Brendan O'Reilly and Todd Martin.
All right, so today's big guest, Luke Poehlmann. So Luke, so give me a little bit of background on where you went to high school, and I know you played a lot of football.
Yeah.
And football is a big part of your whole family.
Sure.
And then where you went from there, where you played, and kind of where it's taken you.
Yeah. So, I grew up I just tell people I grew up in Washington County, the birthplace of Texas, where Sam Houston signed the Declaration of Independence for Mexico, and all those guys over there washing on the Brazos. So I grew up there, went to Burton for a little town. They have the oldest working cotton gin in the state. Yeah, maybe the nation. I don't know if that's true, but I definitely know the state. They have the Cotton Gin Festival every year. My dad graduated from high school there. My two older brothers graduated from there. When I was in junior high, that's what they called it back then, we moved, 15 minutes away was Brenham, and they had a much bigger, better, football program, right? And nothing against Burton. We loved Burton. I loved the town. I loved everything about it. But if you wanted to get noticed for big time ball, it was really hard to get noticed there. And so went to Brenham, moved there, and made new friends, kept up with old friends. Again, it's not that far away.
How old were you when you moved there?
8th grade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like early. It was.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So 7th grade, I'm at Burton. 8th grade, I actually moved in with my grandma, which was cool. She was about 91, and she needed somebody to take care of her, and her caretaker had left. My grandpa had passed away, and she lived walking distance, like 2 blocks from the junior high.
Oh.
For where I was going to 8th grade. So to be like legal and all that kind of stuff, you have to live in the district and all that. I moved in with grandma for like a year.
Oh, nice.
And took care of her. And that was like immediate independence. You go from being like a kid in 7th grade, it was like, got myself up, got myself to school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
I got her stuff, went home, you know what I mean? I'd see my parents. They would come. I'd see them almost every day. They'd come by after work or whatever, and I'd see them, but they were still living out the old house, trying to sell it.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, in high school, played ball there for the Cubs, and was on some really, really great teams. There's a bunch of guys in my junior, senior class, like that junior team. When I was a junior year, that football team had, I think, like 9 guys go D1.
Really?
Yeah. So obviously when you have that many players going Division I, with big schools, they weren't your, run of the mill. Where's that D1 school in the Midwest or something? You had Nebraska, LSU, A&M, Texas, you know what I mean?
9.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you had some big, big name schools coming in, and that obviously drew attention.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're there and you know what I mean? And so it brought attention to me, and I got the opportunity to go play at the University of Texas. So I was just a small town kid in Brenham, America, and went to the hippie city of Austin,
Oh, did everybody like shun you for going up to Austin?
Oh yeah, dude. It was like, golly, you're going to turn liberal or whatever.
Oh, God, there goes that one.
Yeah, I know. Was he going to Austin? A&M, College Station's 30 minutes from Brenham. It's my backyard, but I guess I've always been want adventure, you know? And I don't know why, but I looking back, I know it was the Spirit of God in me, like pushing me and kind of nudging me towards Texas, because it was definitely a step out in faith of like, hey, this is something different than anything you know.
It's a challenging environment too.
Very
right?
challenging environment, and also just it's not anything that anybody did. I mean, A&M was kind of the 13th grade for kids at Brenham. You know what I mean? It's like you graduate high school and
that's where you're going.
Yeah, you're going to try to go to A&M or something, and so it was familiar. The culture was the same, and I loved the University of A&M. I was not a Aggie or a Longhorn necessarily at the time, and so Texas was just one of those places that seemed more of an adventure, but also they had a really great coaching staff there that I was, pretty sure that would graduate me. Whereas at the time, A&M had some coaches they were turning over every 2 or 3 years, it felt like. So it's kind of like, hey, you get recruited, but you don't know if the guy who recruited you is actually going to graduate you.
Yeah.
And that's just a reality for a lot of guys, even today, right?
Right.
I mean, will that coach be here?
No.
So anyway, yeah. So that's kind of the football there. My football career kind of ended with my senior year. We won a bowl game. It was great against Oregon State, I believe, and tried out for some NFL teams and talked to a few, and got the opportunity if I wanted to try to go play CFL. I'd gotten an agent, and I love football, but it was not life. Like the game of football, me playing the game, I didn't love it enough to want to just sell all out. I've got buddies that do that, and I love it. They they'll train, you know what I mean? They'll be a free agent for 2 years trying to get picked up. And
wow.
That's just, for me, I was kind of ready to go, all right, Lord, if you want me to keep playing this game, I'm going to show up. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do the pro day, all that kind of stuff, little combine thing. And if somebody picks me up, great. If not, I'm just as good with that. And so I kind of took that as his plan to kind of my exit from the sport.
I had, I don't know if it was the same year as when you went, but there was a guy. So there's one of my clients from years back. Her name was Barbara Bergen-Nader, and she.
What a name!
Yeah, I know, right? And I think Bergen was her maiden name, and Nader was her married last name. And she was an orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
A really well known orthopedic surgeon in Austin, and her son Matthew. I don't know if he went by. I guess he would have gone by Nader. Matthew.
Matt Nader's my roommate freshman year.
Get out!
No way, dude. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. He had a heart attack on
at Westlake High School,
and his mom and dad
saved him.
Yeah. Was that crazy or what?
Yeah.
That dude's insane. So I would imagine you could be the only roommate in the room with him that would make him feel like normal size. That dude is big too.
Oh, he is a big guy.
He was a big kid.
Yeah. He's a really great dude, man. It was fun being around him.
That is crazy. So his mother rode with me for for like 5 or 6 years. She was a great client. She was a part of our family essentially for a long time. Her and she was really involved with our program, and she ran and competed and won a ton of stuff.
Cool.
She was one of those ones that was going to try all kinds of stuff, always willing to challenge herself. I mean, not a lot of women are going to be orthopedic surgeons. And then, her, I think knee was like one of her big things. Like, you can chunk somebody's big leg around and stuff. You can't be, small and dainty to do that. Right. And she was I think that she actually, I'm probably talking out of as far as like what she's, what I really know that all she did, but she was a partner in a new orthopedic firm and still is, I think, one of the partners in it now and for a long time. And then went on and won a ton of stuff. I even took her to Select World, which is like they call it Gray World, but it was over 50. You go to compete at world championships for just that. Yeah. And she won a ton of stuff with me. And then we trained with another friend of mine up the road and stuff too. But yeah, she was very, very competitive. One of my best clients. Yeah. And a long friend.
That's fun.
That's crazy.
Small world, man.
Yeah. And her kid, that whole story about it was really cool. And then he ended up going on and that whole was a sales rep for that company that made the defibrillator that saved his life and told a story about it. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a crazy deal. And to the coaching staff, they didn't have to honor his his scholarship, and they did. And
right.
He was a big part
he
of
was
the
a
team.
coach. He was like a player coach. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So.
Nah, that kid was pretty inspirational as far as what all he went and did with it afterwards.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. The Naders, good people.
That's wild.
Yeah, that is funny.
That is really
Small
crazy.
world.
Wow, that is cool. So then, what after football, after UT? Then,
man, I bounced around a little bit. I mean, like, so my brother builds homes. I worked with him for a little bit. I worked with different ministries. I did. You're gonna laugh at me. I worked with FCA, but Young Life,
mm-hmm.
and then and there was a ministry called Team Impact. I think they're still around. But have you heard of Team Impact?
Isn't that like the guys like tearing the telephone book and stuff?
Right, exactly.
No, you were tearing a telephone book?
Tearing the phone book, bending the bar in your mouth, big steel, breaking the bricks.
Dude, is there any video of that? I gotta see it.
It's not. But yeah, man, I mean, I was just kind of walking into whatever God had in front of me, ministry wise, and a lot of that just geared towards kids and stuff like that. And so I'd say, I mean, the past probably 12 years or so. What has it been? At least 12, 13 years in some capacity, in some way, with different organizations. I've been serving with high school, middle school kids, college kids,
That's really great. That's really cool. And it's what's cool about it, and what's intriguing to me about it, and I guess probably the big reason why I wanted to bring you on and stuff. Well, for one, because I wanted to hear a little bit about football story and stuff too, but also and to get to know a little bit. We don't ever get to. Me and you have known each other for a while,
right?
And I've never sat down and talked. And had a personal conversation or whatever.
Right. It's always been a small group.
Yeah, it's been a small group or whatever. But we don't need to really get to know each other. And these things are kind of, I think, are fun to get people's stories out. And I think it's cool. But the other big reason is that I've got coming teenage herd of kids. And I do want to, I think I was super lucky to get to, I had a dad and a mom that were really involved with me, that spent time and did things with me, that, were involved in the things that I did. But there was a lot that didn't, right? And I'm different in the sense that I'm going to be 52 in a month. Right. And my kids, the oldest one's 14. And so I'm doing my darndest to stay as active and as, doing things with them and spending time with them. Right. But, I think it would look different if I was like 30 or 35, or 40. I mean, 10 years ago was way different for me than now.
Right. You mean the way you are, or the way you developed, or what do you mean?
The way I am, but also just the climate of things have changed a lot to a certain extent. And it's crazy enough. It's been great for me,
How so? What do you mean? It's interesting.
I don't have, I see that I don't have to fight as much with the outside influences to spend time with my kids. Gosh, it scared me, them being in public school and around a teacher in public school and around a bunch of other junior high kids with, changing and craziness and whatever else, and the influences that they were putting on each other, and me fighting that 7 to 8 hours of the day that they spend with them, and I get 2 to 3 in the afternoon.
Right. At the end of the day when they're tired.
Yeah, and I'm tired, and and because we've come to this deal of off the industrial age of, dad goes off to work and comes back in 5 o'clock in the afternoon at best.
Right.
And it's been great. But I know they had that longing for their friends and whatever else, and we've found that in sports. We've one of the local private schools has opened up their sports program to the homeschool kids.
Nice.
And it has been a game changer. they get to play, they get to have a good time, they're running, they're doing all those things, they can joke around and be foolish and whatever. Right. And it's around sports and doing things, and we get to use all that, you know, in the process of it. They get to have the friends and do this stuff and have parties, but it's all, you know, parties around the kids that they're playing sports with, and
right.
And a lot of other parents that are trying to be as involved too.
Sure.
That's been very helpful, to be honest. It's crazy, you know. It's not the way I grew up.
Right.
Right. Was your dad really active with you?
Oh yeah, my dad. I mean, you look back, and I think when you're a kid, you have no idea what your parents, your coaches, the people around you, your pastors, whoever, right, in life, you don't really understand what they may be doing for you or around you until later you realize, oh my gosh, what did I have? You know, and I say that for like my dad. You know, he could have been a big oil man job. He was a CPA, worked in the oil industry in the 80s, and could have stayed into that. And you know, my favorite quote he ever gave us, he was like, I left that, you know, he left that in the 80s because he didn't want us to grow up being mall rats in Houston, you know?
Yeah.
So moved us out to Washington County, where he, you know, went to high school, and my grandfather was a pastor out in Greenvine, Texas. So that's in the Washington County area. And so they just kind of wound up there and wanted us to grow up on land and learn to kind of be a country boy, and not because that's like the answer, but definitely that slower pace of life of being able, like I think what you're saying is to be around, you know, and not be the guy who's like, I'm gone 3 days a week, or
That's crazy.
I don't even tuck my kids in at night. I mean, he was every one of our little league coaches, you know, in some capacity. He may not have been the head coach, might have been an assistant or whatever. I mean, all that kind of stuff, just being around. I mean,
my dad made the same decision too. Mine was he was a computer repairman, and I remember the time where he had the point at a point where you know, like my dad was one of the smartest guys I still know to this day, and probably one of the hardest working guys, right? He still is like, you know, I remember he was like, I think at the time like 60, and he had a kid he was doing up in Austin. He was doing some landscaping stuff, and there was a kid from Marion that, you know, wanted to go on some extra work and stuff like that, and was like, you know, talk to my dad, he'll take you up there. He does some lawn care, you know, you go up there and help him out, and, you know, get it where, you know, he's an old guy, so you need to like help him with the physical stuff. I remember that kid coming back just flat whooped, you know, at the end of the week, he's still like just beat, you know, it's like, I just can't keep up with that guy, you know, like, but he was just the hardest working guy. Right. But, he had opportunity to be able to move up and be, you know, have a different type of job, but he would end up having to go to Corpus or something like that. But he chose to, you know, that was more important, right? That was, I think that's the crazy thing, is that I think we don't realize how much of an impact generationally we make when we invest into, and not even just our own kids, but you know, the other kids that are around them. Yeah. Did you have like other guys that, you know, that you grew up around and stuff, that your dad was an influence on them?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it was kind of neat, you know, when you grow up in a small town, everybody does kind of know everybody, right? So I can think of several other dads that I was around that they were probably coaches on little league teams, or would take us fishing or pick us up if whatever, you know what I mean? And our parents would do the same. And so there was a lot of that, there's a lot of men, I guess what I'm trying to get at is to look up to, for sure. And I know that he was probably that to other guys as well, right? I mean, I think it's valuable to have that that type of community, right?
And that kind of role models too, right?
Right.
I think you know, it's one of the things that I wonder nowadays is that well, you've been in youth ministry for a long time now. Right. And long enough to see some differences and changes over the years. Do you see fathers stepping up in the same numbers, or do you see them declining, or do you see it from when you were a kid versus now?
I think the question, maybe if I could shift a little bit, is I think it's a cultural question that you're asking, is where are the men? Because when I look at it, I'm like, growing up, I've seen that, to my dad's point, didn't want us to be in mall rats. I've done ministry in big cities like Austin or San Antonio, and then you come out here, which is a lot more like, right now it is, at least it's growing like crazy, but like more like what it was in Brenham, and you have more of that, I'll just call it the kind of good old boy mentality of those dads showing up and being around.
It's a rule. You see that more in the rural.
Right. And I don't think it has anything to do with ag life, or not everybody's a rancher. I just think it's a pace of life. It's a connectedness to, wanting, not just wanting spaces and, people that live on little ranchettes or even an acre or two, right? Yeah. There's a little bit of that, like, I'm going to move my family out to a place where we can slow down and do life, instead of, I want to live somewhere where I can make the most money. Right. Or be the most productive, or be have my kids in the quote unquote best schools, or all that kind of stuff. People will flee to that, instead of they'll flee to success, or what they think that might be, instead of a way of life. Yeah. Right. I've noticed, to be honest, I did a, kind of a capstone through, it was basically like a study, like a self-study, right? Mm-hmm. Of just tasks in ministry. And this guy who was mentoring me kind of challenged me and some other guys to do it. And we, what we did was pick something in our, communities that we would like to understand more, like what God's doing, right? Yeah. Or what's not happening, or what could be better, what could we grow in ministry, right? So you could pick something that you're doing and going, hey, I'd like to see this grow in a certain way, right? And let's do the research and interview people and talk to people. And mine was, where are the men?
Ooh, good. Yeah.
You look around and you're like, every church, big church has a male as a pastor. There's an elder board. A lot of them are men, mm-hmm. All that kind of stuff. You see it in the highest ranks of leadership, mm-hmm. but you don't see it in, like, if you take youth ministry, you can get girls out the wazoo sometimes to come be a volunteer leader.
Oh yeah.
Right. You can get girls out the wazoo to show up to something or get excited about something. And a lot of that is just in their nature, to want to meet and talk and, and mm-hmm. process. Yeah. That's kind of in that girl. There's, where are the guys, And a lot of times I've just seen, it's a lot of it, the dads, just the men, the young 20s, even 30s, they're out trying to produce. Right. Mm-hmm. And that has, like, overtaken their purpose. I met with a lot of men and pastors and interviewed and asked them, because I was just really trying to learn, like, are y'all seeing the same thing I'm seeing mm-hmm. in different facets of ministry? And it's something I saw all over. I wouldn't just say youth ministry, but I would say I saw it over a lot of ministry, right? And that's not to say that there's not wonderful men's groups out there, sure. or men's ministry. It's not that I say it's not happening, but you just look, and a lot of it had to do with time, right? Mm-hmm. It's a resource that you can't get back or can't get more of. And a lot of men were, you're just hustling in your career, trying to provide. It was good things that they're trying to provide for their family or whatever, but they're missing out on these formative years. Before we started this, you were just talking about those friends from high school that you mm-hmm. reconnected with, and it was like, took 10 minutes and y'all right back where you started. Yeah. Those years, those teenage years are so formative to who we are. Even if we change and grow into somebody, they're so formative to who we are, who we'll become, or where we've come from, and it molds you as a person. And those are huge years to be showing up. That's almost the time you want to show up the most in your kid's life, mm-hmm. right? Because it's also that time where they want to push you, right? There's that teenage angst that's kind of, they're trying to gain independence.
I wonder if that, like you said, that was culturally a deal, and I wonder if, because culturally at that time of the 20s and the late 20s and all through the 30s, as men, right, we find our identity. We're looking for our identity. We're trying to find an identity. We're trying to prove ourselves, right, at that point. At the same time, we're having kids, and our kids are going through those formidable years too at the beginning of that, and and what a kind of a concoction that is. You know, I see myself as kind of lucky that I had my kids much later.
Right.
And so now I'm, and it's funny because they don't see the things that I did, right? They don't see the hard work that I put in or the hours that I put in to get to where they just see the dad rides horses in the backyard and that's cool, and whatever. And then they go on about whatever it is they're doing. But, I don't know, I wonder about that, where our emphasis or where we identify ourselves with, a lot of that. And as you're doing that, you're finding that your identity as a teenager and through your friends.
Right.
And it's almost like Lord of the Flies when you have them all stuck around a mall rat, they're all hanging out and spending time over there while you're, running around trying to earn the money for them to buy a bunch of crap at the mall.
Right.
That's a scary thing.
It is. And to give you a stat, this was something that was crazy. I forgot this about that capstone. One of the things I noticed, it wasn't just the involvement of male leadership, right? Because there is that. There are coaches, there are people, but I'm talking about in a volunteer role.
Right.
It was really, the numbers were crazy. I think it was, like there's 30% more girls or whatever. There were youth camps that I either worked, went to, saw were around, and this was different ministries. It was, all that kind of stuff. And they're all saying the same thing. There were times where there was almost 2-to-1 girl to guy ratio of campers, meaning the high school students or the middle school students or whatever, which is crazy. Yeah. Right? When you think about it, you would think, hey, it'd be about 50-50. Maybe you have a few more, but I will never forget this one week of camp had almost, the girls almost, it was close. They almost doubled, not doubled, but 2-to-1 the guys, and you kind of look at that and like, okay, that's not just maybe that's a trickle down from the lack of male leaders, meaning lack of male outreach, the age, that could be part of it. When I wrote a little bit about that, but there's also a part of that that's just, where's that intrigue, that the boys
seeking it.
Yeah. And what are they looking for? What are they hunting for?
I just wonder if they're just not because the role model's not there,
bingo,
for them to see it too. Yeah.
Bingo.
If you're, even if you are trying to do well, if, where you're being seen is at work and not with your kids as much, I wonder, I see that, and I see something that at my age, that I don't see a lot in, because we do, right? We see the elders in the church, and you see a pastor and whatever else. And you see them on the backside of that, where that's where all the wisdom is, right? And where they're gone, but the wisdom is not participating. You come to them to bounce ideas off of, but they're not involved. They're not going at the same time that the middle-aged dad is not going to where his what's the word I'm looking for? Who he should be mentoring. Mm. So the middle-aged guy should be mentoring the young teen.
Sure.
The elder is not stepping in and mentor the middle-aged guy. Right. And so that the middle-aged guy, while he's trying to find his way, is floundering around. Right. Not knowing and not finding what's important.
Right. Or worse, does he have a mentor at work?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But it's not the right kind of mentor.
Oh, yeah.
It's the mentor saying, I'm 65.
It's Bill Braxton.
Right. This is how you make money.
And let me show you how this is, when I was a year, I was, doing this and getting this done.
Right.
And
I believe everything is caught, not taught, especially with men. If you and I were to sit down and talk like this, you and I probably could because we're friends and it would work. But most of the time, most men aren't. Yeah, let's go get together and have some tea and chat. Yeah. Hey, you can come over to my house, help me. My plumbing's busted. Yeah, but I'll be right over. Yeah. And we're sitting there and we're picking axe and digging shovels and fixing a pipe. And at the end of the day, we're buds. you know, because we did something
definitely.
together, and guys want to do something together. We want to learn together. We want to, you know what I mean?
I think that's what sports does, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I think
100%.
that's why. That's why.
That's why men are so drawn to it, right? Like, whether we either were a part of it or long to be a part of that team of something successful, of something growing, because we want to take action, right?
And even if you weren't even like, I mean, success is all relative too.
Sure.
I mean, but just the growth of the other boys around you and the camaraderie of just, you know, it's the struggle of, you know, the first week of football and how, you know, like, oh, so-and-so puked and, you know, whatever that was that, you know, and you can laugh and joke or do whatever, but the camaraderie that through the struggle, right, you all find out, you know, a little bit about each other, and you're just developing what you would see in grown men in the military. Yeah. You know, going through the struggle of war or going through the basic training together or whatever it is that they went to struggle, they create a bond in that. And we're starting that on a mini stage with those kids. The thing that becomes a problem is that when they're not, so where else is that we can do that outside of sports? Right. And the one that I know of is like raising livestock. Yeah. Right. I mean, there's a struggle in that. There's a, you know, like there's a part of, you know, having to, you know, when you're going to castrate pigs, you know, I remember when I was a kid and we like castrate pigs and everybody, you know, they're squealing like crazy and it's like, grab him. And you're like, grab him? Are you kidding me? Like that thing's gross and whatever. It's like, grab him. Yeah. Or something like hunting where you have to dealing with death and come to terms with, you know, a firearm that's scary and, you know, and getting up early in the morning and the struggle and the sleeping in and the, you know, whatever. Yeah. Being cold in the blind and waiting for something and then shooting it and then having to deal with the, you know, gutting something and you're like, ugh. The reality of that. Yeah. The reality of all that. Right. But those are all things that are guided by a mentor or by a.
But they're also an action, right?
Right.
Like you're talking about doing something, and that's something I think that we, as men, you don't have to tell a guy to just do something. Like we'll find ourselves to make where busy, right? I think most men at their core are driven. There's this God-given innate thing inside of us to produce, right? Well, and to work. And so you don't have to tell them to go do something. But I think the problem is like it's what we are doing. You know, that and why we're doing it, right? Well, like if you're just taking your kid hunting, or are you teaching them about life as you're doing that? Because the action is important because it draws them in, but it also the why of like, why are we here? No. What are we talking about while we're walking to the
why in it is so important. Yeah. The why, what it's a reflection of. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I think that's something that's so, I think a lot of men, a lot of fathers, you know, don't know or have the right things to say or don't think that they have the right things to say. And it's not about what you're saying. I mean, it's about a reflection of more of a reflection of what you're doing, right? That I think we lose track of who it is that we're created in the image of, right? And you're created in the image of a creator, right? Like he found joy in that, right? That he found that it's the coolest thing to see one of my kids, one of my boys build a birdhouse, or we were building knives. This is the one in the process, right? We were making knives. When they get done with it, I mean, we didn't even forge them. You know, we're just doing handles and doing that kind of stuff. But when they get done and they see something that they've made, you know, your creator at the end of it went, yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. That's good. Yeah. Made the woman, that's really good. You know, but it's like, it's that, right?
Real nice. Real
exactly.
Nice.
And you know, but that is, that's exactly it, right? Just finding that and seeing reality in your own stuff, true reality, not just, you know, this is because this makes you a man. I mean, like, no, this makes you a product of the creator, and what it's a reflection of. Like speaking truth into that kind of stuff. I mean, I say there's a couple of different ways, but the first way that people came to an understanding of a savior was through nature. Yeah, that was the number one, right? And I don't think that we even look at it you know, the stuff that we look at in the Old Testament, right? And we think, well, that was a different dispensation that, you know, no, they were told of a Savior then. They just had belief in him coming. We have a belief that he came.
And he's coming back.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's the same, right? It's
the same faith.
That's why it was based in faith too, right? They had a faith in the future. We had a faith in that what was provided already. Right? And it's just as, you know, much of a step up on faith.
Sure.
You know.
It takes faith on both ends of that.
On both ends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right?
Yeah.
For us to, you know, as dads, and dads, not just our own sons, right? But I don't know. Yeah. Where else do you see that men can step into?
So yeah, thanks for asking that. This is my opinion, you know. But I do believe this isn't just opinion. I'm convicted by this, but I believe that men showing up in other men's life, right? Like, how many guys do you know? You know, just every guy you know. How many of them do you think actually have another male in their life they can share anything with? Their deepest thoughts, dreams, secrets, whatever, right? That have like some sort of bond to be able to share those things, or to empower and encourage each other. And I think a lot of men, we try to be lone wolves, right? And yeah, you get your buds, maybe your fishing buddies or whatever, but or your golfing buddies or whatever. But those guys that you're really going deep with, and I think that when we talk about how to show up, like back to the kids, even I was talking, you know, our buddy Grant Donaldson about this, and we were talking about, man, how do you walk alongside and be the person discipling your kid? And I said, you know, I think the problem that this is one of those cultural things, is it hasn't really been modeled well. And I'm not going to blame it on the church, but I'm just going to say, when I say the church, I really mean the body lately, right? Yeah. And that's not like really a thing, right? You shop your kids off to youth group, or you put your kids in school, or you put them on that sports team, or you put them with these people, right? And you hope that if all those things go together and you're a good dad, you're farming it out instead of going, hey, but then the question is, the answer is yes, the question's how. Okay, well, how do I do that with my kids, right? And that is such a huge question, because it's uncomfortable, it's scary. Yeah, all I do is yell. Right? Yeah. Do I just yell at them? I don't. Do they feel safe? Like, how will the kids are thinking? How will dad respond? All these things. So there's a guy a couple of years ago wrote a book. It's called Raising Cole. I think you and I have talked about this. I'm not really sure. Great book, my kind of book. Not many pictures in it. Yeah, I like a good picture book. Small words. But it's a good read, because it can't be more than a 1/4-inch thick book. So the story, I actually don't know the author's name, but it's the author is the dad of a guy named Cole Pittman, who played at UT and passed away in a car accident. And anyway, you know, there was all these interviews with the player Cole, who's number 44 at UT, would talk about his dad a lot. His crazy, awesome relationship with his dad. And of course, you know, it's kind of like the painter is never, the artist is never appreciated until they're gone. Right? Yeah. And so there was all this, like, what was this whole thing with, you know, he has this relationship with his dad he always talked about, and you know what I mean? Yeah. It kind of intriguing once he sadly passed away. And anyway, so his dad wrote a book called Raising Cole, and man, dude, if this isn't just the best how, the answer is yes. Really? The question's how. He talked about riding down the road in his truck or whatever, and I mean, him and his son would hold hands. He would hold his son's hand and have that affirming fatherly touch of like, hey, I'm gonna give you a hug because I love you. We're not gonna like be the father and son while you're in high school, so we stopped hugging around 13 because we're gonna be men. Right? Yeah. He's like, no, I'm going to show you how to show like a loving fatherly affection that God has for you. And man, I would never forget the time that I had gone off and I would come back, and I think it was after I was in the military, and one of my friends saw me kiss my father,
and they were like, what? I was like, what? Like you don't kiss your dad?
Right.
I mean, it was just like, and it was like all of a sudden I was like, should I not kiss my dad? Oh, is that weird or something?
Right.
It's like, no. Like I mean, I genuinely love my father. I wouldn't think not to not kiss my father.
Right.
And I was like, holy smackers!
And you look in Scripture, that's all over Scripture.
Yeah.
It was a common. Like,
it's not some perverted thing. It's just like I love my father.
Right. But we somehow even to that, even outside, it's not the perversion. It's a manliness thing, right? Like guys don't show emotion. Yeah. We don't tear up. We don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that there's this that's being modeled. So anyway, in the book it goes on. One of the things I got to do. There's a guy named Steve Hirsch out here in our community who I look up to a whole lot.
Yeah.
I got to help disciple his sons, and anyway, Steve was the one that actually brought this book more to my attention. I knew the story of Cole Pittman and whatnot from going to UT, but I never had read this book, and he was like, you should read it, and I got it. And anyway, one of the things he said in the book that we actually did like a guys' night with a bunch of they were 8th graders at the time. So a bunch of 8th graders and their dad did a steak night. Oh. And one of the coolest, I guess, practices of how to engage not just your kids. I would say this is true for like just men in general,
young men,
right? Yeah. Young men like need this, whether it's their youth leader, whether it's a youth pastor, whether it's a coach. They had this thing called Dead Man Talk in there, and he had it with all his boys. And a Dead Man Talk was kind of the way it was said was dead men don't talk, right? And so you can come to me as your dad and you can tell me anything and you're not going to get in trouble for it. Now that doesn't mean it's like, hey dad, dead man talk, I broke mom's face.
Yeah.
Okay, whoa. It's hey dad, there's when there's something going on in your life, who do you want to call, or who gets that 2:30 a.m. call? Let's not make that call at 2:30 a.m.
Oh, I see. I want to create that environment with my sons, right? And I think that's something that I'm lacking in it, right?
You set the table. And I think a lot of times we don't set the table enough. I don't, whether it's in ministry, whether it's in our family, whether it's in our business or workplaces, of setting the table for transparency, or setting the table for a conversation, or what have you. This dad just set the table really well with his boys of we're going to have dead man talk. And so you can talk to me about whatever you want. And it can be that they would get in the truck and go for a drive and talk, or go, out somewhere private or whatever. And it was kind of one of those things like, hey, your mom's not going to know about it. And your mom's got to, and the mom you got to trust, right? Like, hey, he's talking to his son, and I don't have to know every little detail. It's guy stuff, right? And me and my wife talked about this because we have a boy and 2 girls. And I hope there's a day that Annie and Heidi can have that kind of a relationship with their mom, because there's certain stuff that's just going to be more comfortable to talk to mom about, and that's okay. And I would trust my wife. That's why God gave you 2 parents,
right?
And you or at least somebody in your life, right? That, like, go back to someone of leadership that you can have those dead man talks with, and say, hey, this is what's going on, or hey dad, or I did this, or I experienced this, or I heard this, or I don't really know what to do with something that happened, or I saw, or whatever, and it's weird and it's uncomfortable and I don't know what to do, and you as a dad can go, hey, let me help lead you as a father in that, and then we can kind of go on, right, with life, in the sense of, hey, we've now had this intimate moment, and a dad's more aware of what's going on in his son's life, and this, I think this applies to women and their daughters as well. This isn't isn't just a guy thing,
and I think it has to be said too. Like, right. I mean, we could have an unspoken, you can tell me anything, but really to like create something, just space, right? Just saying it in a way that, like, hey, whatever weird, it's coconut duck or whatever, but but dead man talk is like, that's a cool way of being able to give them something that is, that you've created the opening, and the door is open for you to come to me to do it. Like, it almost has to be said rather than just assumed.
Right.
I'm
thinking of this as like, think about this. If your son right now came to you and said, Dad, and y'all had already kind of talked about what a dead man talk is.
Right.
And your son says, hey, Dad, I need to have a dead man talk. That also sets you up as a dad to be like, okay, we're about to go to a place
where we're going.
I know where we're going. I know what I don't know what it is on his heart, what's laying on my son's heart, but I know there's something heavy and something serious enough to him. And that's something dads need to know too, is like the thing that this kid is your son or whoever, or to the moms out there, your daughter, whatever she's saying is, I need a dead man talk. Like, it's big to them.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we lose that perspective as fathers or as youth leaders or as whoever, or as coaches, that like, hey, this thing that this 15-year-old's going through, is just, you won't even remember it in 10 years. But right now it feels like the world.
Yeah.
It is everything. And so
that is so true.
Yeah. And so to handle it with that kind of okay, we're gonna have this dead man talk. It also appropriates the father or the mom or whoever to kind of, or the youth leader again, to kind of know, hey, this is where we're going. I can prepare my heart. It's not like some big bombs dropped and you're like, okay, what do we do? It's like, Dad, let's have a dead man talk. All right, hop in the truck. We're gonna go get a burger. Or we're going to get a Coke or whatever. It gives
you an opportunity to know,
that's
that's really good. And it does. And it sets you up for what to prepare yourself for, and where you're not going to come into it. Like, okay, so this isn't a time where I can be hot-headed, and this isn't a time where I can't, like, this is big and serious to them, so let's take care of it.
So I want to celebrate. I don't know how much name dropping I can do in here, but
drop away.
So there's I talked about Steve, but another guy I really looked up to was Mike Duras. If you know him, he goes to our church, does welding. Has a shop, great custom welder. Anyway, I'll forget, Mike was in that group. Remember, we got all these 8th grade before they're going into high school, because high school's a big chapter. Yeah. Had all these dads, great steak night. And we kind of illustrated what this dead man, kind of set the table for dads to do this with their boys. Yeah. Right? So we were like, hey, let's just bring up this dead man talk, this idea. And I kind of, as the youth leader, was just kind of saying, hey, I would hope that this is something that you guys can start facilitating at home. It doesn't, like, let's not farm out raising of your boys to some program or some youth thing or some youth guy, right? Like, yes, I want to be a part of your kid's life, but I desperately want you guys to have that table set. Yeah. And what a great time to set that table, right? Going into middle school, high school, junior high, whatever it's called. And I'll never forget, Mike, it was so cool as we were just walking around the circle and people were talking and stuff. And Mike said, hey, I want you boys to know, and he looked at his son, and he says that I want to be here for you, son, but I also want you boys to know I'm here for you too, because there might be that time where you're just having something you need to talk to about your dad, but you're too afraid, or you're afraid of how he'll respond, or you're afraid, and I want you to know you can come to me, and I will help you find a way to talk to your dad. I will help be that bridge. As another, I was like, come on, dude. And how much more of that do we need? Because there are those times it's like, I know I need a dead man talk with my dad, but I just don't know how this is going to go.
Breach this deal, or how big that is.
And it might be big, And so having other men to go, hey, I will walk with you. You guys, And I mean, could we have a community like that? My gosh, what would Jesus do with it?
I know.
It'd be beautiful, right?
I think something that we forget, like history, is such a really cool thing, but we don't look at it a lot. We look at it from like a distant, that was, the Egyptians, and that's not, we don't identify ourselves with that people, right? Yeah. When in reality, ain't nothing different, right? Man, those people are same as what we were. They have same issues, same problems. Ain't nothing new under the sun, man. And we forget that where we came from when we started, and where it was such a good communal upbringing, was before the Industrial Revolution that we have had here. Kids were homeschooled, or small school or whatever else. But the other half of the day, they were in the fields with their dads. They weren't in the kitchen with mom. No. They were out in the fields with dads. So dads were just as active in their daily work with raising the children. Not like we're feeding them lunch. It was more of like, I ain't feeding you because I ain't eating it. But get over there on the plow and figure out the mechanics of this and how to do,
come alongside me, right?
Yeah, instead of like it's, I think we have pushed this off, or we've seen it being pushed off, and it's become something that we think is norm, and I'm just gonna, get ahead on this, or I just gotta, provide that. And
it's so new compared to like the history of human race. Like this is something more in the past 150 years.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And we have belittled, not only like in a absolutely ludicrous way, we have belittled the role of and the importance of a mother by tenfold.
Right.
And we've done the same with the male, with the husband and the father. Like the father, and you look at the downfall of majority of any society, it was fallen because the men weren't there.
Where are the men? That's
yeah,
right.
Where are the men? Yeah, I think that's so important. I think it's a great idea too. That
dead man talk.
Dead man talk.
Right. And I think if you do that, you set that table, right? You have no idea how that can change. To me, what the dead man talk does, or anything like it, you don't have to call it dead man talk. Call it whatever you want. But the idea of that, it sets a table for a transparency. It's just like back to what Grant and I were talking about. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do I do that with my boy?
Yeah.
Because it hasn't necessarily been modeled to us, right?
Yeah, it hasn't.
And some of us have wonderful dads that have in ways modeled that, right? But it's not you're, again, to your point about the schooling and the 8-hour school day and the 8-hour work day or whatever, mm-hmm. We've kind of got this system that like makes that difficult, or makes that space hard to find. Because like you said at the very beginning here, is like you send your kids to 8 hours a day, you're getting them in a few hours in the evening, and that's kind of it when you're both tired, and like and that's mm-hmm. life, and that's culture, and that's the way it is. We're not gonna change the school system and the work day like that, right?
No. But boy, it sure did change a whole bunch.
Right.
Man, it's almost like finding the silver lining, finding the blessing in this madness that's going on right now. Like when we can sit and scream and yell, because that's what I'm kind of good at, is to sit and scream and yell, tell about what that guy's all screwed this stuff up with, and we can get caught up in that. But almost taking a step back and going, what an opportunity. What an opportunity. How many men this past year and a half have had the opportunity to actually spend time with their kids, the opportunity to work a little more from home, even if it's like one day a week where you get to work home from. I mean, all it takes is that one. All it takes is that spending a little extra time in the afternoon, or one night a week that you've got a guys. My deal is mine where I try to create that space is around work. Like and you guys, my kids are like, hey, guess what? And they're all like, like, what do we got to do? We got to go work, or whatever else. But when they get done, they enjoy the heck out of it. I mean, we do spend some time out there, quality time.
Because they're with you.
Yeah, exactly.
They're with you. They're with their dad, man.
And they're going to squeal about having to do it because I'm just, and what was it? You showed me that meme earlier, and now I just made me think of the one, like, you can't insult me. I've held the flashlight for my father. It's kind of like that. But at the same time, like, there's so much to be learned from that.
Right. That
time. Even for me to learn, right? Not just me teaching them, but it's me learning. You can tell me about patience, but it's where I practice the patience. It's where I practice the listening. Good Lord, I'm not good at that.
And how let's take note here for myself, but anybody else that listens to this, to say, how inconvenient is it to have your kids do something that you could literally do it twice the time?
Oh God, yeah, that's
it's
just
like,
let me do it.
They're gonna do it wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. They're gonna break something. They're gonna whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that so crazy? That's how we are with God. He allows us to be a part of what he's doing. And he's like, he could snap his fingers and fix and grow and, restore. But he's so gracious and so patient that he lets us be a part of it. And so, and what happens when he lets us be a part of it? We grow. He knows we grow closer to the Father.
Well, and it's your opportunity. God, whenever you're watching, God, I'm like, that's so convicting for me, because it's like whenever we're out there doing that, we're messing around with that. That's my opportunity to show grace instead of being, just let me do it.
Right. Get out of the way.
Doggone it.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this about convicting me? I thought this was supposed to be doing somebody else.
Well, Max, because it's messed me up. I mean, I'm the worst, and so I look at this stuff, and I learn by messing up more than I do from anywhere else. So I'm hard headed in that way, I guess.
I am too.
Right.
But man, what is a great deal? Well, cool. Great.
Yeah,
that was cool. I love that. You gave me some really good pointers to be able to take and play with my boys. I'm gonna have to Man, I think that would be a really cool deal for even like their football team to grab all those dads together and make a, after at the end of the season, have a steak night for all the boys to sit down and just discussing that and opening the door for other dads to share that with on that whole football team. That's really.
There's one more thing I'm going to throw out there. A buddy of mine, Brett Rogers, did this, and I got to be a part of both of them with his boys. Was when they get to be at 13 or 14, he would do a steak night for his boys, and it would be just his sons, and maybe one friend got to come, but it was a bunch of men that were in the boys' life. It could have been coaches, youth leaders, teachers, whoever, right? Neighbors, guys that knew his son. And it wasn't his birthday party, so it was just a separate whole deal. It was just guys. And we, eat a meal together and laugh and hang out. And then we'd sit down and each one of us would have come prepared with some words of affirmation for that boy coming of age, and to speak how we see Jesus in him, what we see God's doing in his life, how God's made him, and just speaking value into that boy. And he wasn't just his dad, it was these men, right? And you watch it and you go like, what would that be like, right? And you don't just snap your fingers and get that takes time. You have to genuinely know the kid. Yeah. Well, how are you going to know the kid, especially if it's not yours? And now but creating those spaces again, you create those dead man talks with your kid, but you also do it with the football team. Because what's going to happen when you do that, you're going to get to know those other dads. Those other dads are going to get to know other kids as well. Now we're talking like how do we speak into other men, which is something that we don't do that either. Right? When was the last time? We try to cut each other down, and I'm the worst of it. I am. Dude, the way I bond with guys all the time is we cut on each other and spar a little bit,
I'm terrible about that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's in good faith and good humor, but do we follow that up sometimes with a true word of affirmation? Do we even know how to do that to men and build each other up? And so
great idea and a great way to be able to do something like that and being able to introduce that with like the football team. Yeah. And it's like, guys deal and whatever else, but boy, that's a door opener. Oh, right. Huge. To my sons being able to find and identify men in the community who they can confide in if they need to, or create the opening to, if they don't feel like there's something they can talk to me about, but also who are men that I trust and who are men that, are at the same heart that and desires that I do. Yeah. That's a cool idea. I really like that a lot. Yeah.
Let's do it, dude.
Yeah, let's do it. Like not only that, but it's good steaks too.
Yeah, why not? It's good rib, babe. We gotta go get some ribeyes.
But I am going to put there's gonna have to be a stipulation that there is no steak sauce. Like it has to be steak.
If you've got a good steak, you
should not be needing a steak sauce.
And I'm talking get a big fire pit with a grate over it. And let's just fat steaks.
My youngest one tries to put like ketchup or Heinz 57. I'm like, son, what are you doing? Right. Like, why don't you just have beef jerky then?
Yeah,
go
eat a chicken. Go eat a chicken. Yeah.
It's true. It's very, very true.
So, anyway.
Well, cool. Luke.
Yeah, man.
And that's the coolest crap that you were roommates with
Nader. So random. If you keep up with I have not talked to that guy. I don't even know if I have his phone number anymore, but I'd love to reconnect with that dude, man. That'd be fun.
I will get it. I know I got Barbara's phone number.
Yeah. Does she still work with you or no?
She still shows some, I think. And I know the guy that she trains with and stuff. I know I've got her number.
Well, I was just meant if she ever came around here or whatever.
It's been quite a while. It's been a while since she was out.
Small world, though.
It is wild.
Yeah.
That's true. Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to the Go Time Podcast with Todd Martin and Brendan O'Reilly. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Go Time Ranch so you can come work with us each day to learn, have fun, and be inspired. For information on bookings and merchandise, please visit www.gotimeranch.com.